Spirit. Chakras, light waves, and the energies of God. Karma, Albert Einstein, and rainbow-colored food. Frequencies, love, and coincidences. Tomatoes, sugar, Hershey's chocolate, and a bottle of Pepsi. Oh wait, that one was my shopping list. But this is a brand new season of Anomalous Realities on Revolution Radio.
You see things.
Yeah.
I don't know where I am.
In the space of outside of the physical reality.
Experiences, unusual experiences. I call them movements.
Yeah. It's crazy. Would start moving. Zip from one place to the other.
And he showed me a number of things. He showed me some episodes from a few of my previous lives.
Sure.
Joining us tonight on Anomalous Realities is the book author of The Frequency, Linda West.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a new season of Anomalous Realities. It has been an interesting break for us here, and we will go into that into the second hour. But tonight, I would like to welcome our guest. Linda West is an author, and she has had some very interesting experiences. So, Linda, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And Mark E. Mint is in studio with us as well. Mark, how are you doing?
Good evening, thank you. Nice to be back. Doing well, and have enjoyed some epic storms here, flooding much of the local country. Didn't you just say you've been having storms?
Yeah, actually, oh gosh. We were actually out and about today because we're doing the Spirit Fair in Oklahoma City this weekend. And I was picking up my oldest daughter because she will also be doing readings this weekend, and she will be doing readings for tips. So she'll be doing free for tip readings this weekend. But I was grabbing her, and she's about an hour away from me. As we're coming home, the skies literally like just open up and pour down, and on a normal highway where you go like 65, everybody was going 45. There was like no visibility whatsoever. It was just, it was torrential. So we got home safe at least. So there's that. But yeah, the weather's been crazy here. I heard down in Texas, Linda, you guys got a lot of rain too.
Yeah, well, I think it's just so symbolic actually because I work with a lot of people one-on-one, and there's been so much turbulence, inner turbulence, that, when I hear it echoed on the outside, I'm like, of course, because, we're connected, and this is a solar eclipse, and it's a very difficult rebirthing that we're going through, and, I think everything's reacting to it, including our environment, as outlier as that sounds.
Wow. Now I heard you have some interesting news recently, some new developments in your life that have kind of come about as a result of your work, I guess you could say.
What I was just talking to you about earlier?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of interesting. I started briefly. I was raised Catholic, and you're really not allowed to look into anything according to my religious upbringing. Anything that was alternative, it was considered kind of,
a taboo,
Yeah. And then, of course, I moved out to California. I was acting early on, and I would have friends that were, good people that were open to these alternative healing modalities. And, long story short, I ended up channeling one of the, highest angels next to God. Blessed be. I feel totally grateful and surprised, to tell you the truth. I feel like the straight man in the comedy of my life a lot of times. But what I found when it comes to when you're really connecting with higher energies, and by the way, speaking of Mark, I love your voice. You have a great voice. And you too, Lenita, because I'm clairaudient, so I'm very attuned to that. You both have rocking voices. I'm
Oh
not
gosh.
surprised.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm still recovering. I actually had a horrible virus, and it literally hit me just when we went to season break. So it was almost like it happened as it was supposed to happen, you know?
Right.
So yeah, I'm recovering now, but it's mostly back.
Well, it's been a really tough shift for a lot of people.
It has.
I mean, a lot of my clients, and it's like, there's some things that you can just write off to, oh, maybe that's coincidence, and I don't like to write, things into something that aren't there because really miraculous and magical things happen all the time. So I don't need to make things up, but so many of my clients got fired over the last month, and they were all devastated. But then they immediately almost got put into new jobs where they were so much better off. And so I think that's kind of a really good thing to talk about what's going on, especially we're in the middle of the solar eclipse. This is a monumental moment in time. This doesn't happen. This is a 50-year moment of letting go of stuff that isn't serving you and really being honest without hating it. Because I did a video about this today actually, because so many of my clients were having trouble, because when you shift into a higher frequency, very often you'll get sick like you did, or it's like when you have a facial as a woman, you'll break out before your skin gets better. And so when you shift into a new frequency, because you're letting go of stuff, and that includes toxic things, there's almost like a breakout of emotions. Sometimes you can get ill, fatigued. Definitely emotions are on a super high right now of really being honest with who am I? Not with everybody else, but really who am I? Because, we're all snowflakes, and it's you might not like parts of yourself, but really we don't want just gray in this world, and I think that the solar eclipse is about, I keep telling people, point your ship where you want to go, because a big gust of wind's coming in, and you want to be pointed in the right direction, not some nebulous land of oh, I don't know where I'm going, you know what I mean? Use it, line up and be here comes my. I often talk to my clients about windows, because, sorry, I'm going on a little bit, but I start channeling sometimes, but windows do really come up in people's lives. There are moments of time where things are more opportune and easy and are lining up. And the solar eclipse is definitely one of those lineups. Man, if you want to change your life, get it in order, realize what's not working for you, be honest, it's okay, we're all human, and then get on toward where do I want to go, even, and this is the big caveat I tell people, and we can talk about this, you never know how it's going to come in. You always think, and I tell people this, it's kind of like a fisherman, he throws his one line into the river and he's trying to get his dinner, with his fishing hook, and that line to me is money, because most people are I need money to get my dinner, to get what I need, right? But what I found after years of this, kind of being thrust on me, this information, I ended up breaking a code in the Mayan calendar, winning a scholarship with Terrence McKenna, RIP, where I wrote my first book on frequencies. I channeled it, downloaded it, and it's about manifesting what you want. And I realized at a certain point, everybody's counting on money to get what you want. And that's why they say money's, the love of money's the root of all evil. Because in truth, it's amazing how things come through with no money. And the deal is, people have to know that you don't have to know how. That's the best part. That's the miraculous, wonderful part of life, is that if you just have that belief and keep moving toward what you want with inspired action, in other words, if you're trying to write a book, like I'm an author, and all of a sudden
Right.
I get the idea, hey, I should watch videos on how to market my book. Well, I should go over and do that. I'm not one of those people that thinks you should just like be singing Kumbaya in the corner expecting things to show up. I think God's like,
Action.
I'm bringing you some information. Act on it. You know what I mean? You're in the third dimension.
Exactly. It's up to you once you get that inspiration, once you get that nudge from, whatever source is trying to send it to you, to listen to it and act on it.
Right, Lenita. It's really important because a lot of people don't understand that in the third dimension, we are working with the triangle. It's Pythagorean theory. It's geometry at its core. It's six-dimensional geometry. The fourth dimension's time. It's a circle. Sixth dimension is music and geometry. And the way we create things in the third dimension is with like geometry. And in the third dimension, if we don't have the triangle, it does not manifest. I will give you an example. You meet a guy you think is super hot, okay? He's like so good looking, you're like, oh my God, over the moon, okay? And maybe he's like a surfer, so he's got this wild, like water spirit, like, oh, okay, but stupid. Stupid, can't keep a job, can't add 98 IQ, you can't really talk to him about anything. This is what happens. You have two sides of your triangle that are hot for this guy. And then you have the third part that's like, heck no. I can't not deal talking to somebody, expanding with somebody. So this is a small example of why you will not marry or stay with this guy. We do this on every level of our lives, with our jobs, with our homes, with our friends, where we get two parts and we don't realize when we get the third part, when all three of us agree on something, that's when it comes into our world. That's when we say, I'm marrying you, or I'm taking that job, because all three parts of me are like, my mind loves it, my body loves it, and my spirit loves it. And that's what we're dealing with in the third dimension. So
that's how manifestation works, right?
It really does, because almost always, like, people are like, they think they have to try to manifest, but I always tell people, no. If you just really get to the point, like, for instance, a lot of women or men too will want to talk, in my personal clientele about love, finding the right person for them. That's right up there with world travel, money. Those are the three important things. I want money. I want love, and I want to be able to see the world and experience like this whole globe. These are the dreams of 90% of the people that contact me. Yeah. Some of them want to talk to like deceased people, or there's something's going on. They're astral projecting. They don't know how to deal with it. I get those clients too. Awesome, but the bottom line is, it's like I always tell people, it's like, when you figure out, like the girl that thinks she wants to marry the guy in her office. Well, when I start questioning her and getting her down to what's really real, what she's really only comfortable is maybe having a conversation with him over coffee. It's like nowhere near marriage. Like, I mean, that would be ridiculous. So I always tell people, like, scale back a little bit, not because you can't take the huge leap and manifest, like, what you want, but because a lot of times all of you isn't really ready for that huge change. That means, like, leaving friends, leaving homes, leaving, lovers sometimes. So small steps work better for us human beings.
Exactly. Now, I want to take a step back because I'm really, really curious about this. How did it come into being that you actually worked with Terrence McKenna? Because I know a lot of our listeners are very familiar with Terrence McKenna. They're huge fans of his work. So how did this come about?
Really interesting way spirit works. So like I said, I started channeling. I was around this huge crystal with a bunch of people praying for the world and everything, and all of a sudden I started shaking, completely went back in time and had like a true spiritual experience with the angel that showed himself to me in one of his human incarnations, which was Hiawatha, which was the chief of the Mohawks of the Iroquois Nation, where I'm from, actually. So it was kind of interesting. I camped at his grave as a little girl. So, well, anyway, he'd been down also as an Egyptian and as a Mayan. And, when spiritual, like, things like this happen to a normal person, you don't really want to believe them. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, this is crazy stuff. You know what I mean? You try and write it off. But then what ends up happening is, like, kind of spirit knocks on your door again. And you're like, and these coincidences start happening that you can't, like, ignore. So, for instance, I had suddenly found myself fascinated by the Mayans. Don't ask me why. I'd been a cheerleader and a model, but suddenly I was like, had to read string theory, Pythagorean theory, and everything about the Mayan calendar, which of course led me to Terence McKenna.
Okay.
Well, so I started writing a script because I was in Hollywood about, trying to raise the vibration of the world. It was called The Frequency, which is also the name of the book, which you are the narrator of, which was a #1 bestseller. Thank you.
Yes, and we've actually been doing giveaways of the book during the shows last season quite a bit too. So listeners, we would draw from listeners and announce. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, actually, in honor of the show tonight, I put the book down to 99 cents because I know.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So it's going to be at that price for a couple days because I knew you would have listeners. And gosh knows, sometimes, we need a break on something. So anyway.
Guys, boy, 99 cents, you need to pick yourself up a copy of The Frequency because there is so much vital information in this. If you're wanting to understand how to use what people call the law of attraction, right? The secret in your life and actually make it work. This is the book. This is it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I could play a sample of it if you like.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
Oh.
Okay, it's tricky because it's just you, Lily, just talking again. Here we go.
The reason you have to be clear is because you will not manifest what you want unless all 3 parts of you wants it. Meaning that sometimes we shut out voices we don't want to hear but are trying to communicate with us. In the West, we tend to listen primarily to our mind and not as much to the voices of our bodies or spirit hearts. What we manifest always depends on an agreement between the 3 parts that make up our whole.
That was cool, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome.
So that's a little tidbit of it.
Yeah, and totally awesomely true. And I think
that's kind of what we were just touching on, honestly.
It is good excerpt there, and really that might be a magical coincidence for anyone that's listening, because honestly, if you can just get to the point where, and lately, Lenita and Mark, I've been using this little thing I'm going to share with the audience.
Okay.
Where you ask yourself, and it'll come out true, like, is this loving for me, or is this, like, for instance, say you're trying to manifest something and it's not manifesting. Almost always, like, people will come and say, I'm manifesting wrong. And what I say instead is, you're not manifesting wrong. You're not listening to all the parts of yourself, and one part of you is not comfortable with this, so it's not happening. So at that point, I always say, like, ask yourself, like, what would be the next loving step for me to take in my journey? And listen to what your spirit says to you. It will lead you when you say, what is the most loving thing? Like, my answer is always like, right, keep writing, like, but it'll be different for everybody, and we should always check in, because, and then when you ask that, without a doubt, this is what I need to be manifesting. Like, I loved surfing. That was one of my first manifestations. But I just wanted to segue, back to Terence McKenna, because Terence McKenna, truly without a doubt, is one of the most brilliant geniuses that have ever walked the planet, as far as I'm concerned. And I've studied a lot of them, in my humble opinion. And so I basically wrote a script around The Frequency about an end of the world series, like end of the world movie, where raising your frequency and getting into your heart and connecting back to the planet was the only thing that would save you. So I was trying to symbolically teach people, like, what we needed to do to save, because I care about the planet, people, animals, trees, rivers, oceans. I care about it all. I come from an Indian background. I am Mohawk. Yes. We were taught to, like, respect everything, and honestly, I mean, come on. I mean, it's kind of a
Right?
no-brainer. It's like,
And
but
we can use more people understanding that right now.
yeah, really, really. And it's sad. I had hoped when I was a child that we'd be much further along, as a child of the 60s, I thought they would have figured it out by now, but it's still up to us, it seems, my friends. um,
I think it always was. But you know what I like is that we are in a period of time right now, which I like to call the awakening, where we're seeing more and more healers rising up and out. And actually, I'm working on a book of my own right now that is about that. And the funny thing is I had people asking me to tell my life story, and that will be done eventually. But I couldn't do it because it wasn't right. And the reason it wasn't right is because I had another book to write before that one. And this one is about what's happening right now because we have so many healers that are emerging into the world right now. And I think it's because it's meant to be. It's because it's necessary at this time. I think we have a lot of volunteers here right now.
oh, I'm going to agree with you there.
So now, what was the dreams that you had? Because you said you had some dreams. I remember reading somewhere that you had some dreams, that there was some symbology in that kind of led you down that path that got you connected with Terence McKenna.
Right. Well, I started dreaming every night about math and geometry. I am not a math lover. And, after it was going on for a couple weeks, and my roommates, I'd wake up and I'd be like, "What time is it on the equator? And what does it mean? Like, if there's a triangle, like, trining that something obtuse." I didn't know. They're like, "You need to start writing this down." So I started writing it down, basically because I thought, well, I don't know, who the heck knows what this is, and it won't go away.
Right.
And so then that led me to trying to understand that, which I said ended up, sending me back into, I was always kind of a science fan, but never really quantum physics. So it led me toward quantum physics and string theory, and then ultimately Pythagorean theory and Einstein and the Mayan calendar. And of course, Terence McKenna, always connected with the Mayan calendar. Oddly enough, the scholars of the Mayan calendar believe it's a universal time machine, so we can communicate with sentient beings in multiple dimensions or universes. That's a whole other story, but so I started getting interested in that, and then I found out that Terence McKenna was he had a living library in Maui where he had gone into all of the rainforest around the world with tribal people and identified all the plants that were magical or healing, and then he took samples back with him to Maui to protect them just in case, as we know, sadly, how the rainforests are being decimated for,
Right.
money, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right? And so I was so enthralled by the idea that he was trying to keep what he called a living library, that, and I had recently written my movie, and I had a lot of big directors I was friends with at the time, including Michael Mann and Larry Mortoff, and that were really, really successful directors that were interested in it. And so I thought I was going to make tons of money off the movie. So I wrote Terrence, and I was wanting to donate to his, living library. And he ended up sending me back this thing about scholarships going into the Mayan runes on, and lectures with ethnobotanists and theogens from around the world that were coming to lecture about the Mayan runes and about the magical plants around the Mayan runes and mushrooms, of course, which he's an expert on. I'd had no experience with any of this. I wrote an essay and won the scholarship. So I ended up down there, and this is, I guess, I should like start with the fact that like I was like my ex-husband was a very big recording artist on Capitol, and then the
Mhm.
whole music industry kind of failed. So